everyone to the DRW live interviews show. Not sure what we're calling it yet, but today we have Megan Gessler. And of course, we met through the Summer Institute. I have so much respect for the work that she's been doing in the nature-based early childhood education world. But I'm going to give her a moment to introduce herself, and we're just going to have a conversation today. And don't be distracted by the dog that wants to show up every time I push record.
You can't expect me not to be distracted. I'm a dog lover. Hi, I'm Dee's friend. I'm honored to call her a friend of mine. And yes, my name is Megan, and I am the Early Childhood Program Coordinator for the Little Trees program at the Morton Arboretum in Lisle, Illinois. And this is our third year there in operation. But I also previously ran a nature preschool at a local forest preserve district for 7 years prior to that. And I got my master's at Antioch University. I can't say enough good things about Antioch. And that's me in a nutshell. I really don't want to give you my LinkedIn resume because honestly, I'm a fellow learner just like everyone else. And I love working with children and working out in nature, and the fact that I get to do that for a profession, it's not a lost blessing on myself. I am full of gratitude for getting to work with those kids every day, and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that as well.
Absolutely. Oh, and now I'm just echoing. This is a mess. Let's try this again. So I can totally relate to the LinkedIn account because I've refused to actually like make it professional. People keep recommending it, but I'm like, guys, that's a lot of work. I don't know if you feel that way, but it's just like, it's a lot of work to maintain. But I'm like, one day in like 5 years, I'll finally like have it right. And then it'll be something else, right?
You only have the bandwidth to do so much. So I understand that, but I try about once a year to go on and update it just to make sure it's current, because the last person that interviewed me read off my LinkedIn right at the beginning of the interview, and I thought, oh, time to update. There's some inaccuracy.
Wow. See, I learned something new just hearing that. I'm like, okay, maybe I should really work on this. So one of the things that I really appreciate from your work is emergent curriculum. Like the first time I came across you at Summer Institute, that was like one of the biggest things that you talked about. And we met in 2019. So I started going to Summer Institute in 2018, but I came across you the same year that I started presenting too. Mm-hmm. And I just found it so fascinating because I come from a very like traditional early childhood education setting where it's like I wasn't trained to do emergent curriculum. And if it wasn't for like your presentation, I don't know if when I like dove into Outback, like if I would have even understood like that is a real thing. So could you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. What I do kind of borders on emergent / project-based. It just depends on really where the kids are at and what they're interested in. So kind of an overview of my curriculum and philosophy for the programs that I run is that we do have a loose curriculum so that there are always themed totes full of activities and books and art and craft ideas, process art, I should say. And then, it's just full of all sorts of goodies and ideas for each theme. And it's seasonally based because usually what the kids are interested in is what they're seeing and experiencing when they are immersed in nature. And so we know there are certain themes that are going to pop up through the year, or we assume that. So we've got those at the ready. But, kids come up with the most interesting things that kind of, it's their learning that you have to grab a hold of, and it can seem tangential to you, but it's not to them. And so I know you're familiar with my pirate story, which kind of took hold one year when I was teaching, because I don't have a theme boat ready for pirates. I wasn't ready for that in Illinois. We don't even border an ocean. So I'm not sure where the pirates would have come from. But to make it simpler so that your audience can kind of understand emergent curriculum. My kids read a book called Roxabox in one year, and it was about some children on the East Coast. If you don't have this book, put it in your library. Highly recommend. And they were creating a town, a little tiny village out of seashells and rocks and the things that they found in nature. And so my kids just really grabbed a hold of that book. They gravitated towards it. And we didn't have seashells really, abundantly where I'm at in Illinois. We do have shells in the river, but not, like the East Coast does. So they created an entire village that they named Stixaboxen, and they phonetically spelled it out on a sign. It's the cutest sign ever. And I gave them boards that they could paint on, and they created something called Gorls Village. It's Girls Village, but they spelled it out. It was just adorable. And so they became city planners that year, and they planned an entire community within a grove of evergreens. And it still stands today. And those kids go back and they talk about Stixaboxen, and they have like just the best memories there. And you can work in all of those quote unquote academics to whatever it is that they're interested in. They were spelling out words because they were so excited about their village, and it just came organically. It didn't feel forced at all. They weren't sitting at a desk working on a worksheet. This was coming from their heart. And when you ensnare their heart, the learning just flows. So, and they thought about roads and green spaces and what kind of buildings that they would need in Stixaboxen for a community to thrive. So just think about all of the learning that went on just from that simple emergent curriculum. They created maps, 3D maps, regular maps. So we're talking spatial awareness. So yeah, follow the kids' lead. It will take you to great places, and it will inspire you as a teacher. It's not the same stuff that you're pulling out and same old tired tricks from your bag of tricks. It keeps you on the toes and excited about learning alongside with the children.
Absolutely. That was, I can hear myself echo, and I just want to fix it.
You don't sound echoey over here.
Okay, that's good. I definitely, so when I had the Outbackers, I feel like we didn't have pirates, but they started to really explore the zero-scape yard that we have here, because of course I live in the desert. But they started to look for treasures, and it was really interesting because they would just, every day that they would show up, they just kind of added to the story, and we just went along with it. But how do you navigate that? How do you help parents understand that what emergent curriculum is? Because sometimes I think parents are looking for, well, I want to know, what are you doing? How do I know they're going to learn something? So
because we're also product of the same system that you're talking about, right? It's so ingrained in us what school/education looks like. So it is scary for a first-time parent to think of something else that doesn't look like what they are used to for their child, because they want their child to be quote unquote prepared for kindergarten. And really, it's going to take a societal shift to understand that we are not preparing them for their next grade level. We are preparing them for life. We want lifelong learners. And if you look at those giant tech companies, guess where they're sending their children to school? Montessori, Reggio, nature-based. And they don't let their children play with electronics before a certain age. So they understand the value of what they call soft skills. I hate calling them soft skills because they are the most important skills that you will need to thrive in a community. How can you collaborate with others? Talk about building grit and perseverance and stick-to-itiveness. So those are the things that are going to get you through life, right? It's not rote memorization of your ABCs. So how do we sell parents on something that we early childhood educators know to be developmentally appropriate practice, right? So I document, as every educator out there knows. It's kind of like a little bit of the bane of your existence. Document, document, document. But if we're all utilizing that same early childhood language, when we communicate things to the parents, they will understand, okay, this is their profession. They know what they're talking about. This is what my child is getting out of this situation. So if we were talking about the Stixaboxen, for example, I would document the literacy skills they were building, the civil engineering, the, everything else that came, mapping, all of that. I would attach one of our state's early learning benchmarks to it, so that they understand that this looks like play. And yes, it is play. But guess what they're getting out of it? And usually within the first few weeks, I get parents telling me, oh my gosh, I had no idea that my child would be getting this much out of your program. Some of them had enrolled their children in 2 different types of programs because they wanted the academic program and the nature-based program. And pretty soon we see that those kids are now enrolling for more days in the nature-based program, and they are no longer at the traditional type of program.
Yes.
And that is not a knock on traditional type programming. It's just saying that people are starting to recognize the value of nature-based emergent curriculum.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I definitely took away in 2019 was not just the emergent curriculum, but that same year, I clearly I was like a Megan fan, because at Natural Start at the conference, I went to your session, and that's when I learned about Storypark.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that because, again, coming from that very traditional setting, we use what's called Teaching Strategies Gold. Great system, very intense, but I really enjoyed Storypark. Did I do a great job this past year with the parents? I could have done better, but like any new system, it just takes time to figure out like what works best, what you need to do different. But I really liked the how easy it was. Like I could literally take a picture of the kids doing something and then just link like literally the standards of whatever the kids were doing, the Outbackers were doing. And I think that would have been helpful. I think it was helpful to parents, but like I said, it kind of happened in waves. And then of course, things happened in March. So
pandemic, right. I think it's also an easy tool to use for beginning teachers to learn what your state benchmarks are, because when you document in Storypark, you create a story out of photos, and then you attach learning tags to those photos, like what is happening in that photo. And anytime you type in a word, like numbers or something like that, your state benchmarks will pop up, and you can click on whatever it was they were learning. So if it was, recognizing written numbers or something like that, you click on that and it attaches it to the story right away. So you become really familiar then with your state benchmarks by using Storypark. And by the way, I get no money from them, so I can say this unbiased.
Look, I say that all the time to people. I'm like, no kickbacks.
No kickbacks, but I do enjoy using them as a documentation tool.
Yes. So I guess one of my other questions is how did you get into nature-based early childhood education? When did that journey start for you?
Yeah, that is a convoluted story. So I was a journalism major, and that's where I found my husband at Northern Illinois University. And then I graduated and was this businesswoman, wasn't planning on having kids. I was out to conquer the world. And then along came a little baby. So everything changed. And as she grew, I started working in the parochial school where I had her enrolled. And then after my son came along, I started working in the Montessori where he started going to school. And then shortly after that, I started working at a forest preserve district. So I kind of got to marry everything that I liked out of my last experiences with the Forest Preserve District as we created a nature-based program. And so while I was managing that program, I started to go to Antioch University New England, where I really kind of honed my practice and solidified my personal educational philosophy.
Okay.
And that's kind of what created both that program and the program that I'm running now at the Morton Arboretum. So I know it's kind of like follow the bouncing ball on my journey. It took me till the age of 40 to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And and now I found it, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Understandable. So one of the things that I would say, I don't want to call it a project, but a group that I'm in with you that you started, and I hope I say the title correctly, the Nature-Based Early Childhood Education Council for Administrators. Could you talk about what inspired you to start that group?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I know that's a mouthful to say that. I had to look at it. It's in my notes. Council of Nature-Based Early Childhood Education Administrators. So I have to give a little backstory there in order to say how this came about. So 7 years ago, I formed the Northern Illinois Nature Preschool Association, which we lovingly refer to as NINPA, because at that time in Illinois, there was nobody else doing nature-based preschools. And I had driven 3 hours north to Schlitz in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to find out what they were doing. And I was so impressed with Patty Bailey and the work that she was doing. But they were so far away, and I needed to find people closer to me who were doing the work that I was doing. Nobody was. But lo and behold, I found 2 other facilities that were just starting up. And so we kind of got together and we shared resources and talked about our failures and our successes, and kind of we provided a little bit of professional development for each other because we each had our own strengths. And we decided that that was working so well, and that nature preschools seemed to be in forward movement. So we thought we would create NINPA, and now we have over 200 members.
Wow.
Right? And it's free membership at NINPA.org. And we provide 4 member offerings per year of professional development and networking, where everybody can get together and talk about the same things that we talked about in the very beginning, just on a larger scale. So a few years into NINPA, I got a phone call from Christy Merrick at Natural Start Alliance, and she asked me to be on the leadership team there. They wanted to know what we were doing at NINPA because they wanted to do it on a national level. I didn't know we were the only regional association in America. And so she was really excited about, what was going on in Illinois. How could we make this national? And so I got to know a few people scattered here and there that were doing similar work, specifically with regional associations, because I am the chair of the networking committee for Natural Start. So I got to know Liza Lowe really well, who's at Inside Outside on the East Coast. And when the pandemic hit, we were on a phone call together, and I was telling her, I got together with all of the administrators in the NINPA team to talk about the challenges that we are now facing, because it's unique challenges.
Right.
And right now, everybody is looking at nature-based education and wanting to know more about it. And we're all getting, this huge surge and influx of query. And what are we doing? How can we do a little bit of what you're doing? So there was definite need for that discussion. So I was talking to Liza about how really impactful it was for me to get together with just the admin team to talk about how can we address this? How can we create something that will reassure the families that what we're doing is a healthy option? And also, how can we address the rising inquiry from public programs? And so she said she was having the similar conversations on the East Coast. Maybe we should combine and see what we come up with. So we had a Zoom meeting, and everyone was so emphatic that we needed to create a position statement and get it out there as soon as possible to let people know, what the benefits are of nature-based early childhood education, and specifically during a pandemic.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how it came about. And I already had a Facebook group going of a few friends of mine that are administrators. And so I said, let's just use that, dump everybody in there who wants to be a part of that. And so all of the names that you see on that position statement, I'm fortunate enough to be friends with all of them and work as a peer amongst a great group of people who helped create that position statement, really, because it's everybody's position statement. It's definitely not mine. And Liza and Beth Wilson put in a ton of work into that position statement as well. And every month afterwards, we're going to come out with a highlight of one of the sections of the position statement that will exemplify. So if you are new to delving into the world of nature-based education, if you're a public school educator who wants to, grab part of that for themselves and kind of, weave it into your already existing curriculum, we're going to give you some ideas, and that will be through intellectual benefits, social emotional benefits, and physical health benefits. And we'll give you ideas of what you can do to address all three of those areas in your own classroom, sort of give you some tools.
Yes.
And if you want to join us, if you are also an administrator of a nature-based preschool and want to join us, you can look up Deona Williams or Megan Gessler on Facebook and send us a message, and we'll hook you up into the group, or you can try to look for the group and we'll add you in.
Absolutely. I can already say, just from the short time that I've been a part of the group, it's been really beneficial, because again, being in Arizona where there's not a lot of people doing this type of work,
right.
And if they are, they're far away. They're at least 3 hours away from me. And so it's been nice to connect with other administrators about doing this type of work. But what people don't know about the admin side of things, it's more than just like working with the children directly, but it's all the paperwork that you have to do. It's getting ready for the following year, navigating through strange times like what we're going through right now. And so to have that type of support system, I find it to be beneficial. So we're promoting it hardcore just because it's like, it's really, you don't have to do this alone. Like that's my point.
For sure. In fact, we just had an organic discussion pop up because Catherine Coons Hubbard from Schlitz in Milwaukee said, what are you guys doing in cold weather? Like what's your cutoff temperature? And it's such a hot topic right now for those of us who are living in colder temperate zones that we have to deal with right now. And so that's exactly what this group is for right now. It's almost like crisis mode. We are really just helping each other navigate this new situation. And for the few of us scattered around who are doing this, it's really important that we learn from the successes and failures of others and what they're doing right now. That's why it's super important. And also wanted to note that this isn't like an organization where there is a board or a hierarchy. It's just a group of admin coming together during this time, just specifically to address these types of issues. And so those types of discussions, like if you had one, Dee, that you wanted to talk about, then you post it and create a Zoom, and the people who are interested in having that discussion will hop on.
Absolutely. Because one of the things that I brought up the last time we were all talking, because this is the interesting thing about being an administrator navigating during these times, is every state or county or city is impacted by this situation very differently. So typically when Outbackers would have been returning back, although our numbers had declined, but I needed to make a decision about if I was opening really before like September.
Yeah.
That was just the bottom line for me, for business purposes. And then the other part that I have to navigate through too is, I mean, there's the insurance part, like the liability. If someone were to be sick in my care, I live in a rural space and it's like we don't have the same amount of accessibility as like a city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just like if someone were to get sick, like these are barriers that I'm enduring. And so those are things that I would bring up in the group to say, how have you navigated through this? What have you done? Because the other piece is that someone else may have been able to operate this entire time. And I'm not going to say like they haven't experienced someone being sick or not being sick, but I just know from other conversations, whether it was with this group or not, it's inevitable. Somebody like you're going to get in contact with it one way or another. But my thing is like, how do I keep the children safe, the parents safe, like, and it just, I don't know. That's what I love about the group is that I can take those types of issues that I'm going through as an administrator and saying, okay, what policies do you guys have? Like, how do you navigate through extreme heat? Because that's what we've had since March, and we are finally hitting fall tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's going to be 40 degrees at night and like a high of 65. I know you're like, that's summertime for us.
It's 34 degrees tomorrow when my kids arrive at school, and I don't know if it will be raining or snowing. So.
Oh my gosh. Which leads to another, like, this is another great conversation. Because I feel like this comes up for someone that lives in an extremely hot place. How do you help parents, and not just parents, but educators too, that are thinking about like, well, I want to do more outdoor things with my children, but it's snowing, it's raining, or it's 100 degrees outside. And I'm thinking about Phoenix because Phoenix, it could be 11 o'clock at night and literally be 100 degrees. Whereas I'm 3 hours south and it's not that extreme. But I definitely, for myself, I tend to do things earlier in the day. So by the time it like starts to actually get really hot outside, we're not even in session at that point. And that's another reason I don't start till September, you know. But how do you do that in cold weather? Like you guys get all 4 seasons.
Yeah, totally different. And I'm sure you have a bag of tricks that you utilize with water play and things like that to combat the heat. So I mean, there are activities that we absolutely love to do in the snow and things that you can do that you can only do in the cold in Illinois. And so it's my favorite time to explore with the kids. 1, there's no ticks. 2, there's no poison ivy.
See?
So you just wait till all of that dies away. And then the kids have easier access into and out of the forest because there isn't all of that brush and bramble stuff in front of it anymore. It's so easy for them to see wildlife and to track things. So winter is absolutely my favorite time to teach with these kids. And that is actually when those emergent curriculum type of things start to happen because they've found their groove. They understand where their strengths are in their community. And we've worked through forming that kinship and the growth mindset, and they're ready to go. So like winter is my absolute favorite. But if we're talking about cold weather temperatures being dangerous, that's another topic altogether. But we follow the NOAA wind chill factor, and it's a chart that NOAA puts out, and it tells you how many minutes a person can be outside without getting frostbite, and that is for exposed skin. So we absolutely make sure that we never exceed any of those limits outside with the children. And we want kids to love nature, so we're not going to have them outside if they're not comfortable.
Yeah.
And if they're not comfortable, I'm not comfortable. And let's face it, it's all about me. So then we'll come in. But this year during a pandemic, we do have like warming chandeliers. I'm not sure what to call them. And they will be hanging down at our shelter. And our shelter has some vinyl walls on it. and a fireplace in there as well. So we have access to that space, and there's still a good flow and circulation of air coming in there. So I'm planning on utilizing that for as much as I can. But when we're talking sub-zero, I'm not going to have the kids on a cement shelter floor where that's just going to radiate up through their feet. We will take them inside and we will spread them out for something like that.
Wow. How long is your program? How many hours is it a day?
So I'm super lucky. I have my personal kids, my students are there 3 days a week, 2.5 hours at a time. We have a 2-day, a 3-day, and a 4-day option this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. All right. So are there any final thoughts that you want to say before we conclude today's interview?
Final thoughts, pearls of wisdom you're looking for, huh? Well, I would say if you're thinking about doing it, now is the time to really research and dig in to what it is that what nature-based early childhood education really is, because it has become apparent to many people throughout the world that this movement needs to happen. It's time to declare mutiny in public school. Can I say that? On the way that we currently do education. You know, so if anything positive can come out of a disgusting pandemic, let it be the catalyst that changes education for our children, and to provide space for them to connect back to nature. And for those of you who don't know what biophilia is, please look it up. It's our innate connection to nature. We are born with that, and we have that curiosity about nature. So let's feed it. Let's get the kids out there, get them connecting, take their shoes off, let them walk barefoot on the grass, and let them really get reacquainted with the environment in which they are part of. We are the environment. Humans are the environment just as much as the animals and plants make up the environment. And it's time to get that kinship back and time to take back a natural form of learning that seems, just fluid and effortless for those kids, for all children.
Yes, yes. That is the biggest message that I really wanted those that attended Summer Institute that have been in this work for a really long time. Like, how can you help your community change this narrative of like 15-minute recess outside?
Yeah.
And because the reality is that those of us that have been in the work, whether it's been 20 years or 5 years or 2 years or 3, we definitely have more experience than those that have never done it before. And they're looking for people like you and I and so many to say, so how do we do this? You know what I mean? So I think that's really great.
Try it. Dip your toe in it. And for those beginners, you don't have to be an expert on plants and animals in your area. You're learning alongside the kids. And when they see you figuring out the answers and doing it with you, that is going to be more beneficial to them in the long run. You don't have to know it. Just go explore it with the kids and let them lead the way.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for coming on today. I cannot wait for people to see this very specific interview. And we'll definitely have to do this again. Of course, I'm going to pick your brain about more emergent curriculum, but I can't thank you enough for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.